The ship landed on Outpost Sigma 7 with a sound like thunder. Park looked up from his work and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had been treating a miner with a broken arm when the vibration shook the walls of his small medical station. Visitors were rare here. This outpost sat at the very edge of known space, far from anything important. It was a place where the galaxy sent people it wanted to forget. Had been here for 3 years now, and he had learned to expect nothing good from Coalition ships. He finished wrapping the miner's arm and walked outside. The air was cold and thin. 2 Coalition officials stood near their ship, their tall bodies covered in ceremonial robes. They were a species known for their cruelty and love of politics. Behind them, 4 soldiers held something between them. No, not something, someone. Walked closer. The officials smiled at him with too many teeth. Park, the first one said, "The human medic, we have heard of your work here. 3 years serving the lesser species of this outpost. How noble." Said nothing. He had learned that silence was safer around Coalition officials. "We have brought you a gift," the second official said, "a reward for your dedicated service to the Coalition." The soldiers stepped forward and threw their prisoner to the ground. She landed hard in the dirt, her body wrapped in chains that glowed with blue light. Neural shackles. Had seen them before. They caused constant pain and made the wearer unable to use any technology or weapons. The prisoner was female, though not human. Her skin was pale silver and her hair was white like fresh snow. She was thin, too thin, and her clothes were torn and dirty. But even in chains, even covered in dust, there was something in the way she held her head. Something that spoke of pride that had not yet been completely broken. "This is," the first official said, and his voice dripped with amusement. "Once she called herself Queen of the Empire, ruler of 12 star systems, commander of 1,000 warships." The officials laughed. The soldiers laughed. Even the wind seemed to carry their mockery across the empty outpost. "She tried to change things," the second official continued. "She wanted to free slaves, give resources to the poor. She forgot that empires are not built on kindness." He kicked dirt toward the fallen queen. "Her own council removed her. Now she is nothing, less than nothing. She is property." Looked at the woman on the ground. She did not look up. She did not beg. She simply waited, as if she had learned that waiting was all she could do now. "Why give her to me?" asked. The officials exchanged glances of pure delight. "Because, human, you are also nothing. A primitive species that joined the Coalition only 50 years ago. You have no status, no power, no importance." The first official leaned closer. "Among our people, giving someone a fallen royal is the greatest insult. It says that both the giver and receiver are worthless." "We thought it would be amusing," the second official added. "A worthless human and a worthless queen, together in this worthless place. Perhaps you can keep each other company while the universe forgets you both." They laughed again, long and loud. Then they returned to their ship without another word. The engines roared, and within minutes they were gone. The outpost fell silent once more. Stood alone with the fallen queen at his feet. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Looked at the chains around her wrists and ankles. He looked at the neural shackles that sent waves of pain through her body every few seconds. He saw how she flinched each time, though she made no sound. He knelt down beside her. Finally looked up. Her eyes were violet, deep and tired and full of something that might have been fear. She was waiting for the first blow, the first insult, the first of many cruelties that she expected from her new owner. Instead, reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tool. He pressed it against the neural shackles, and after a moment they clicked open and fell away. Gasped. The sudden absence of pain was almost as shocking as the pain itself. She stared at the shackles on the ground, then at the human who had removed them. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was rough from disuse. Stood up and offered her his hand. "Because those things are cruel, and I don't do cruel." She did not take his hand. She did not trust him, he understood that. "I am your property," she said carefully. "According to coalition law, you own me. You can do whatever you want with me." "I don't want to own anyone," said. He lowered his hand but did not step back. "I don't care what coalition law says. I don't care who you were or what you did. You're not property here." Searched his face for lies, for hidden motives, for the trick that must surely be coming. Every species in the coalition played games. Every act of kindness had a price. That was the way of the universe. But the human just looked at her with calm, tired eyes. There was no hunger in them, no malice, no calculation. "Can you walk?" he asked. Slowly, painfully pushed herself to her feet. Her legs shook. She had not walked freely in months, but she stood on her own, refusing help even now. "Good," said. "There's food inside and a bed. You can eat and rest. Tomorrow you can decide what you want to do." "What I want to do," repeated. The words felt strange in her mouth. No one had asked her what she wanted in a very long time. "Yes," said simply. "You're not my prisoner, you're not my property, you're just someone who needs help, and helping people is what I do." He turned and walked toward his medical station. After a long moment followed. The food was simple but warm. The bed was small but clean, gave her privacy and asked nothing from her. He simply returned to his work, treating the miners and refugees who came to him with their wounds and sicknesses. That night lay awake in the darkness. She listened to the wind outside and the distant hum of machines. She waited for the human to come, to demand something, to reveal his true nature. He never came. For the first time in months, slept without fear, and when she woke she found breakfast waiting for her outside the door, still warm, with a small note that said only, "Eat, rest, you're safe." She did not understand this human. She did not understand kindness without conditions, but somewhere deep inside her chest, in a place she thought had died long ago, something small and fragile began to wake up. It felt almost like hope. Days passed on Outpost Sigma 7. Did not speak. She stayed in the small room had given her, coming out only to eat. She watched everything with suspicious eyes, waiting for the trap to close around her. Did not push. He did not ask questions. He simply went about his work as if having a fallen alien queen in his home was the most normal thing in the world. The outpost was a busy place despite its small size. Miners came to with broken bones and infections. Refugees from distant wars came with wounds both visible and invisible. Workers came with burns and cuts and lungs full of dust. Treated them all without asking for payment. He worked long hours, often forgetting to eat or sleep. Watched him from the shadows. She did not understand what she was seeing. In the Empire, healing was a transaction. Doctors served those who could pay. The poor died in the streets while the rich lived forever. That was the natural order. That was how things worked across the entire coalition. But this human treated everyone the same. He sat with a dying old miner for hours, holding his hand and talking softly until the end came. He gave his own food to refugee children who had not eaten in days. He stayed awake through the night to watch over a sick infant. And when morning came, the child was alive and was smiling despite his exhaustion. One evening, found herself standing in the doorway of the medical station. A young alien woman was crying while bandaged her injured arm. The woman had been hurt by her employer, a cruel mind supervisor who saw workers as tools to be used and thrown away. "He will do it again," the woman sobbed. "He always does, and no one cares. No one ever cares." "I care," said quietly, "and this time things will be different." The next day, learned that had spoken with other workers. Together, they had confronted the supervisor. They had threatened to stop all work unless conditions improved. The supervisor, faced with losing his profits, had agreed to change. It was such a small victory. In the grand scale of the galaxy, it meant nothing. One mine on one forgotten outpost at the edge of known space. but the workers celebrated like they had won a war, and celebrated with them, laughing and sharing drinks, as if this tiny moment mattered more than all the politics of empires. That night came to sit beside him. He was alone outside, looking up at the stars. He did not seem surprised to see her. They sat in silence for a long time, then finally spoke. "I do not understand you." Glanced at her. "What don't you understand?" "Everything." His voice was rough. She had barely used it in months. "You gain nothing from helping these people. They cannot repay you. They have no power, no influence. By coalition standards, they are worthless." "Coalition standards are wrong," said simply. "But you believe them anyway. The officials who brought me here treated you like dirt. They called you primitive, worthless, and you said nothing. You just accepted it," shook her head. "If you have so much pride in your values, why do you let them disrespect you?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "I let them talk because their words don't matter. What matters is what I do, how I treat people, whether I make the world a little better or a little worse." He looked at her. "Their opinion of me doesn't change who I am. Only my actions can do that." Had no response. In her world, reputation was everything. Power was everything. The opinion of those above you shaped your entire existence. She had spent her whole life climbing, fighting, struggling for position and influence. And this human simply did not care. More weeks passed, began to leave her room more often. She started helping in small ways, cleaning equipment, organizing supplies. Never asked her to work. She simply could not stand doing nothing any longer. One night, as they shared a simple meal, began to talk. She told him about her childhood in the palace, about learning that her people had built their empire on slavery and conquest, about the moment she had looked into the eyes of a dying slave child and realized that her crown was built on suffering. She told him about her attempts to change things, about the laws she had tried to pass, the slaves she had tried to free, the colonies she had tried to save. She told him about the resistance she had faced, about the nobles and officials who saw her reforms as threats to their power. She told him about. "He was my high arbiter," she said, her voice bitter. "My most trusted advisor. I believed he supported my vision. I was a fool." Her hands tightened into fists. "He organized the coup. He turned my own council against me. He rewrote history to make me a villain. And when it was done, he did not even kill me. Death would have been too kind. Instead, he made me a slave, a trophy, a joke." Listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked only one question. "Do you still believe in what you fought for?" Looked at him. The question hit her like a blow. She had spent so long in chains, so long in despair, that she had forgotten to ask herself that question. Did she still believe, after everything, after losing everything? "I don't know," she whispered. Nodded. He did not push. He did not judge. He simply accepted her answer as it was. "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to know right now. You just have to keep moving forward. The answer will come when you're ready." He stood and began cleaning up from their meal. Watched him, this strange human who asked for nothing and gave everything. "Why did you remove my chains?" she asked suddenly. "That first day, you didn't know me. You had no reason to help me. I could have been dangerous. I could have killed you." Paused. He looked at her with those calm, tired eyes. "Because when I was young, someone helped me when they didn't have to," he said. "I was alone and scared and had nothing. A stranger gave me food and shelter and asked for nothing in return. I never saw them again, but I never forgot what they did." He shrugged. "I can't save the galaxy. I can't change the coalition, but I can help the person standing in front of me. That's enough." Felt something shift inside her. Something that had been frozen for a very long time began to thaw. She had ruled an empire. She had commanded armies. She had spoken before councils of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, but she had never met anyone like Park. He was not powerful. He was not important. By every measure the universe used, he was nobody. And yet he was the first person in her entire life who had treated her like she mattered, not because of her crown, but simply because she existed. That night, for the first time since her fall, did not dream of revenge. She dreamed of something else instead. She dreamed of becoming someone worthy of the kindness she had been shown. The distress call came in the middle of the night. Woke to the sound of his communication device screaming an emergency signal. He rushed to check the message, and his face went pale. A refugee colony on a nearby moon was dying. A plague had spread through their population, killing hundreds. They had sent requests to the coalition for medical aid, but every request had been. The refugees were former supporters of people who had fled when took power. The coalition had labeled them enemies and left them to die. Began packing his medical supplies immediately. Appeared in his doorway, awakened by the noise. What is happening? Explained the situation in quick, short sentences while he worked. A colony, a plague, people dying, no help coming. These are, said slowly, my people. Yes. They supported me. That is why the coalition refuses to help them. Yes. Watched him pack medicine and equipment. Her heart was beating fast. These were her people. Her failure had led to this. If she had been stronger, smarter, more careful, would never have won. They would never have become refugees. They would never have been abandoned to die. I am coming with you, she said. Looked up. Are you sure? If anyone recognizes you, it could be dangerous. Has spies everywhere. I am sure, said. Her voice was stronger than it had been in months. They are dying because of me. The least I can do is try to help. They traveled for 2 days in a small transport ship borrowed from the outpost. When they arrived at the colony, felt her stomach turn. The colony was a place of death. Sick people lay in rows on the ground, too weak to move. The healthy worked frantically to care for them, but there were not enough hands and not enough medicine. Bodies were being carried out every hour. The air smelled of sickness and despair. Got to work immediately. He had seen plagues before. On Earth, humans had faced many such disasters throughout their history. They had learned painfully how to fight them. He organized the healthy survivors into teams. He created isolation areas to stop the spread of disease. He identified the source of the plague, a contaminated water supply, and worked to clean it. He treated the sick with what medicine he had and taught others how to help. Worked beside him. At first, the refugees did not recognize her. She was thin and worn, nothing like the proud queen who had once ruled them. But as hours turned into days, whispers began to spread. One old woman grabbed his arm as she passed. Her eyes were wide with shock. My queen, she whispered, is it truly you? Did not know what to say. She had expected anger. She had expected blame. She had prepared herself for their hatred. Instead, the old woman began to cry. We thought you were dead. We thought had killed you. We mourned for you. She gripped his hand tightly. You came back for us. The news spread quickly. The fallen queen was alive. The fallen queen had come to help them. But not everyone was happy to see her. A young man confronted her while she was carrying water. His face was twisted with anger. You abandoned us, he spat. You were supposed to protect us. You were supposed to lead us. And when came, you fell. You let him win. Stood frozen. She had no defense. Everything he said was true. My mother believed in you, the young man continued. His voice cracked with grief. She refused to bow to because she believed you would return. They killed her for it. They killed her because of you. He shoved her hard, stumbled but did not fight back. Other refugees gathered around them, watching. I am sorry, said quietly. I am sorry for your mother. I am sorry for all of you. I failed you. I know that. I have no excuse. Then why are you here? The young man demanded. Why now? What good does it do? I do not know if it does any good, admitted. I only know that I could not stay away. Your people are dying. I could not sit safely somewhere else while that happened. She looked at the ground. I cannot bring back your mother. I cannot undo what did, but I can be here now. I can help carry water and hold the dying and bury the dead. If that is all I can do, then that is what I will do." The young man stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly the anger in his face faded. It was replaced by something else, something tired and sad. "Fine," he said. "Then get back to work. We have sick people to tend to." The plague lasted 3 weeks, worked every day until she could barely stand. She held the hands of dying strangers. She listened to their last words. She helped dig graves and wrap bodies. She did not sleep more than a few hours at a time. On the worst night, when it seemed like the death would never end, she found herself sitting alone outside, crying. She had not cried since her fall. She had thought that part of her was dead. Sat down beside her. He did not speak. He simply sat with her while she wept. "So many dead," she finally said. "So many lost, and this is only one colony. There are thousands like it. Millions of people suffering because of the empire I once led." "You did not create that empire," said. "You tried to change it." "And I failed." "Yes," agreed. "You failed, but failure is not the end. It is only the end if you let it be." Wiped her eyes. "How can you be so calm? How can you keep going when there is so much pain?" Thought about this for a moment. Humans have a saying, "Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. We have survived as a species because we refuse to stop trying. Even when everything seems hopeless, we keep going. Not because we know we will win, but because giving up is not who we are." He looked at her. "You fell, pushed you down, and you stayed down. You accepted defeat, but that is a choice. You can choose differently." "What choice do I have? I have no power, no army, no empire." "You have yourself," said. "You have your beliefs, and now you have people who remember that you came back for them." He gestured toward the colony, where fires still burned through the night. "Word of this will spread. People will learn that the fallen queen returned to save her people. That is worth more than any army." Looked at the colony. She thought about the young man who had accused her. She thought about the old woman who had cried with joy. She thought about all the hands she had held, all the faces she had seen, all the lives that had touched hers in these terrible weeks. Something had changed inside her. The frozen thing that had begun to thaw on the outpost had now cracked open completely. Pain flowed through her, but so did something else. "Purpose." "I cannot save them all," she whispered. "I am just one person." "No one can save everyone," said, "but everyone can save someone, and sometimes that is how the world changes, one person at a time." When the plague finally ended, stood before the surviving refugees. She did not give a grand speech. She did not make promises she could not keep. She simply said, "I will not forget you, and I will not stop fighting for you, whatever it takes, however long it takes." As they left the colony, looked back one last time. In the ashes of so much death, something new had been born. The Queen was finally ready to rise. The ship arrived at Outpost Sigma 7 without warning, watched it descend with his hand on his medical bag, ready to treat whoever emerged. But when the door opened, he saw a face he had not seen in years. He breathed, stepped onto the landing pad. She was younger than by 6 years, but she had always been the sharper one, the one with the talent for words and politics. She had climbed the ranks of human diplomacy while had chosen to disappear to the edge of space. Now she wore the formal clothes of a coalition ambassador, and her face was tight with worry. "Brother," she said, "we need to talk." They sat inside the medical station while watched from the doorway, glanced at her with curiosity but said nothing about her presence. "Word has spread about what happened on the refugee colony," said. "The coalition knows that is alive, knows she helped save those people." She pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. A hologram appeared showing a document covered in official seals. "This is a kill order. Anyone who helps or hides the fallen queen will be executed without trial." Stared at the hologram. His expression did not change. Did you come to warn me or to tell me to give her up? He asked. His eyes flashed with anger. I came to warn you, you fool. Do you think I would turn in family? She took a deep breath and calmed herself. But you need to understand how serious this is not playing games. He sees as a threat now. As long as she breathes, she is a symbol that his power can be challenged. Then what do you suggest? Asked. She had been listening silently, but now she stepped forward. I will not hide forever. I cannot watch my people suffer while I do nothing. Studied her for a long moment. You really have changed, she said quietly. The reports I read about you described someone very different, cold, arrogant, obsessed with power. I was those things, admitted. Your brother helped me see another way. Looked at with an expression that was half pride and half exasperation. Of course he did. He has always collected broken things. I prefer the term helping people, said mildly. Before could respond, another ship appeared in the sky. This one was older and rougher, a cargo vessel that had seen better days. It landed heavily beside sleek diplomatic craft, and a man jumped out before the engines had fully stopped. The man shouted, running toward them. I came as fast as I could. Stood and embraced the newcomer. It's good to see you. No was tall and broad, with scars on his face and hands that spoke of a hard life. He and had served together in the early days of humanity's time in space, fighting in small conflicts that the galaxy had already forgotten. Now captained a cargo ship, moving goods and people through the forgotten parts of Coalition space. I heard about the kill order, said, his voice serious. So I reached out to some old friends, people who owe me favors, people who are tired of the Coalition treating humans like dirt. He grinned. Turns out a lot of us are ready to push back. Raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting some kind of resistance? I'm suggesting we stop lying down while the Coalition walks over us, said. Story has spread farther than you know. Humans across Coalition space are talking about it. A fallen queen saved by a human medic, an empire that tried to destroy her and she's still standing. He looked at. You've become a symbol, whether you wanted to or not. Felt the weight of his words. She turned too uncertain. I did not ask for this. I do not want humans to die for my cause. It is not just your cause anymore, said gently. Humans have been treated as lesser since we joined the Coalition. Every day our people face discrimination, exploitation, and contempt. What happened to you is what happens to us. He paused. If we help you fight, we also fight for ourselves. But the cost, protested. War is not a game, people will die. Your people will die because of me. Stood and faced her directly. You think sacrifice is only noble when you do it alone, that you have to carry everything yourself. He shook his head. That is pride, not strength. True strength is letting others stand beside you. True strength is building something together instead of trying to save the world by yourself. Stared at him. In all her years as queen, no one had ever spoken to her like this. Her advisors had always told her what she wanted to hear. Her enemies had only offered hatred, but told her the truth even when it was hard. Then what do you suggest? She asked quietly. Smiled. I suggest we do things the human way. Over the following weeks, taught about human history. He told her about the wars and revolutions, the rises and falls of civilizations. He explained how humans had learned, through terrible suffering, that tyranny could not be defeated by one hero alone. Victory came from movements, from ordinary people joining together for a common cause. He told her about leaders who had inspired without commanding, who had earned loyalty instead of demanding it, who had lifted others up instead of standing above them. The empire was built on fear, said one evening as they planned their next moves. Subjects obeyed because they were afraid of punishment. That is why it was so easy for to take over. He simply became the new source of fear. Then how do we build something different? Asked. By giving people something to believe in, not a ruler to obey, but a vision to share. People will fight harder for hope than they ever will for fear. spent long nights thinking about these ideas. They went against everything she had been taught. Queens did not share power. They did not ask for help. They commanded and others obeyed. But look where that had led. Her empire had betrayed her. Her power had crumbled. Everything she had built on the old foundation had collapsed. Perhaps it was time to try a new foundation. She began to reach out to her old supporters not as a queen commanding loyalty but as a voice asking for partnership. She did not demand. She invited. She did not threaten. She offered hope. To her amazement, people responded. Messages came from across coalition space. Former officials who had been purged by, military commanders who had refused to accept the new regime, ordinary citizens who had never stopped believing in the reforms had tried to make. But it was not only who answered. Other species joined too, races that the coalition had conquered and forgotten, people who had suffered under the same system that was now fighting. And humans, dozens of humans, then hundreds, people like who had been waiting for a reason to push back, people who saw in Story a reflection of their own struggles. "You asked me once if I still believed in what I fought for," said to one night, as messages of support filled their screens. "I have my answer now." "And what is it?" Looked at him with eyes that had changed. They were no longer the eyes of a fallen queen. They were the eyes of a leader reborn. "I believe more than ever," she said, "but now I understand that believing is not enough. I have to be worthy of the people who believe in me. I have to earn their trust every single day." She reached out and took his hand. Thank you for showing me the human way." Smiled, "You learned it yourself. I just opened the door." Outside, the stars burned bright against the darkness of space. Somewhere out there was gathering his forces, preparing to crush this new threat. He thought he was facing a broken queen seeking revenge. He had no idea that he was facing something far more dangerous. He was facing a movement, and movements could not be killed. They gathered in the shadows of the outer reaches, in places the coalition had abandoned long ago. Broken moons, dead stations, worlds that had been stripped of resources and left to rot. These were the places where the forgotten lived, and now they were becoming the birthplace of something new. Stood before her growing alliance and saw faces of every kind. There were refugees who had lost everything to this regime. There were soldiers from half a dozen species who had refused to serve tyranny. There were merchants and miners and farmers who had simply grown tired of being crushed by those above them. And there were humans, so many humans. They came from colonies across coalition space, bringing skills and courage and something else that was only beginning to understand. They brought hope. Coalition propaganda called them the Fallen. The name was meant as an insult, a reminder that they followed a disgraced queen, but looked at her people and saw strength in that name. "We are the Fallen," she declared at their first true gathering. "We are the ones the coalition threw away, the ones they expected to die quietly in the darkness, but we did not die, we survived, and now we will show them what the forgotten can do." The crowd roared its approval. For the first time in a very long time, felt like she belonged. But building an alliance was harder than making speeches. There were countless problems to solve. Different species had different needs. Old hatreds between groups threatened to tear them apart. Resources were scarce, and spies seemed to be everywhere. Became's closest advisor. He had no military training, no political experience, no knowledge of galactic strategy. But he understood people. He knew how to listen. He knew how to find common ground between enemies. He knew how to calm anger and inspire courage. "Your coalition thinks humans are primitive," told a group of suspicious officers one day. "They think we are too emotional, too attached, too soft," he smiled. "They don't understand that those are our greatest weapons. We feel deeply, so we fight fiercely. We form bonds, so we protect each other. We never give up because giving up is not in our nature." Slowly, the officers began to respect him. They had been trained to see emotion as weakness. But watching him build bridges where others saw only walls, they began to question everything they had been taught. Learned from him every day. She learned to lead by example rather than command. She learned to ask questions instead of giving orders. She learned that true authority came not from a crown, but from the trust of those who followed her. Together, they began to fight back. Their first target was a slave colony run by one of his allies. The Alliance attacked at night, overwhelming the guards and freeing hundreds of prisoners. They did not kill unless necessary. They offered the enemy soldiers a choice: join them or leave peacefully. Many chose to join. News of the raid spread quickly. The slaves had been freed by the Fallen, by the Queen who was supposed to be dead, by humans who were supposed to be weak. More victories followed. Supply convoys were captured. Weapons shipments were intercepted. Coalition outposts in the outer reaches were liberated one by one, made sure that each victory helped ordinary people. Food went to starving colonies. Medicine went to sick populations. Weapons went to those who wanted to defend themselves. She also began to send messages across coalition space. Not calls to war, but calls to conscience. The Empire promised you order through fear, her voice said in broadcasts that reached billions. For generations, they told you that cruelty was necessary, that power must flow from the top down, that some must suffer so that others may prosper. Her voice grew stronger. They lied. We offer you something different. We offer you freedom through unity. We offer you a future where your value is not measured by your species or your status, but by your actions and your heart. Many ignored the messages. Many thought she was a fool, but some listened. Some began to question. Some began to hope. Watched all of this with growing rage. He had expected to fade away. He had expected her to be broken and forgotten, a warning to anyone who dared challenge the established order. Instead, she was becoming a legend. He called his generals and admirals together. "This cannot continue," he declared. "Every day she grows stronger. Every day more people join her foolish cause. We must crush her now before she becomes a true threat." His advisors nodded in agreement. They began planning a massive assault on Alliance territory. They would bring the full weight of the coalition military down on the Fallen and grind them into dust. But while planned destruction, planned something else entirely. She gathered her inner circle and the commanders of her growing forces. They sat around a simple table in a hidden base, far from the eyes of coalition spies. "We'll attack soon," said. "His scouts have been probing our defenses. He is gathering his fleet. We cannot defeat him in direct combat." "Then what do we do?" one commander asked. "Run, hide, wait for him to hunt us down?" "No," said, "we fight, but not the way he expects." She turned to, "Tell them about human guerrilla warfare." Stood and began to explain. He told them about small forces defeating larger enemies through speed and surprise, about striking weak points and disappearing before the enemy could respond, about winning not through strength, but through making the enemy's strength work against them. "Has more ships, more soldiers, more weapons," said, "but he also has more territory to defend, more supply lines to protect, more allies who might abandon him if they think he's losing." He looked around the table. "We don't need to defeat his fleet. We need to make him look weak. We need to show the galaxy that he can be challenged." The commanders exchanged uncertain glances. This was not how wars were fought in the coalition. This was not the proper way of doing things. But nodded firmly. "This is the human way," she said, "and it has worked for them through thousands of years of conflict. We will learn from them." Over the following weeks, the Alliance prepared. They trained in new tactics. They identified targets that would hurt without requiring massive battles. They reached out to potential allies inside coalition space, people who might turn against if given the right opportunity. And they spread stories. Stories about the Fallen. Stories about the human medic who had saved a queen. Stories about hope in the darkness. One evening, as they watched ships being loaded with supplies, Turn 2. I never thanked you properly, she said. For what? For everything, for removing my chains, for teaching me, for believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself. She looked at him with eyes full of emotion. When those officials gave me to you, they thought they were burying us both. Instead, you lifted me higher than I ever could have risen alone. Shook his head. I didn't lift you, I just helped you remember how to stand. Everything you've built, everything you've become, that came from you. It came from both of us, she said firmly. And whatever happens next, I want you to know that you changed the fate of an empire, not with weapons or politics, but with kindness. She smiled, and it transformed her face. That is the most human thing I can imagine. In the distance, warning lights began to flash. Scouts had detected coalition ships entering the sector. The war was about to begin. Took a deep breath and turned to face it. She was no longer a fallen queen seeking revenge. She was a leader, and she was ready to fight for everything she believed in. The first wave of coalition ships came like a storm. They filled the darkness of space with fire and metal, their weapons lighting up the void like angry stars. Watched from the command center of their hidden base as reports flooded in from every sector. Sector 7 is under attack, casualties heavy. We've lost contact with the supply convoy in the Reach. Enemy forces have surrounded Station 12. They're requesting immediate support. She gave orders quickly and calmly, directing her forces to respond. But even as she spoke, she knew the truth. They were losing. Had brought everything. His fleet outnumbered theirs 10-1. His soldiers were better equipped, better trained, better supplied. The alliance had spirit and courage, but spirit and courage could not stop a missile. Day after day the losses mounted, ships destroyed, bases captured, friends killed. Worked without rest, treating the wounded who poured into their medical stations. He saw faces he knew carried in on stretchers, some alive, some beyond help. Each death was a wound on his heart, but he did not stop. He could not stop. On the 5th day, word came that No's convoy had been attacked while evacuating refugees from a dying colony. His ship had been hit badly. He was being brought back for emergency treatment. Met the transport when it landed. They carried out on a stretcher, his body torn and bleeding. He was barely conscious, but when he saw, he managed a weak smile. Still alive, whispered. Not bad for an old cargo pilot. Save your strength, said, working quickly to stabilize his wounds. You're not dying here. You still owe me money from that card game on Mars. Laughed, then coughed. I always meant to pay that back. Worked through the night. By morning was stable but weak. He would survive, but he would never fly again. The damage to his body was too severe. When came to see them, she found sitting alone in the medical bay, staring at nothing. His hands, usually so steady, were trembling. How many? She asked quietly. Today, 43 dead, over 100 wounded. His voice was flat. And hasn't even used his main fleet yet. This is just the beginning. Sat down beside him. The weight of command pressed down on her like a physical thing. Every death was her responsibility. Every life lost had been given in her name. Perhaps we should retreat, she said. Fall back to the deeper regions, regroup. And abandon everyone we swore to protect. Looked at her. His eyes were red from exhaustion. There are millions of people counting on us now, colonies that declared for the fallen, populations that rose up against coalition control because they believed in what we were building. If we run, we'll make examples of them. Then what do we do? His voice cracked. Watch our people die, send more soldiers to be slaughtered. I cannot bear it. I thought I understood sacrifice, but this, she pressed her hands to her face. This is too much. Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady. Let me tell you something about humans. Looked up. Our history is full of wars, said. Wars where we killed each other by the millions. Wars that made no sense. Wars that should have destroyed us completely. He paused. But we survived. Every time we survived. Do you know why? She shook her head. Because even in the darkest moments, there were always people who refused to give up. People who looked at impossible odds and said, "Not yet. We are not done yet." His eyes met hers. The galaxy thinks humans are weak because we feel too much. They mock us for our emotions, our attachments, our stubborn refusal to accept what seems inevitable. But that is exactly what keeps us going. He reached out and took her hand. Yes, we are losing. Yes, people are dying. Yes, this hurts more than anything I have ever experienced, but pain does not mean defeat. Pain means we are still fighting. Pain means we still care. His grip tightened. The moment you stop feeling the cost of war is the moment you become like cold, empty, a monster who sees people as numbers. Listened. Tears were falling down her face, but she did not wipe them away. "So what do I do?" she whispered. "How do I keep going when every step forward costs so many lives?" "You honor them," said simply. "You remember every name. You carry their sacrifice with you, and you make sure their deaths mean something by continuing to fight for what they believed in." He squeezed her hand. "That is all any of us can do. Fall down, get up, keep moving." They sat together in silence as the sounds of war continued outside. Ships launching, wounded arriving, orders being shouted, the endless rhythm of a conflict that might never end. But somewhere in that silence, found something she thought she had lost. Strength. Not the strength of armies or weapons, but the strength that came from choosing to continue when everything screamed at her to stop. She stood slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she stood anyway. "I will not surrender," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I will not let their sacrifice be wasted. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, we will see this through." Nodded. "Then let's get back to work." The following weeks were the hardest of the war. Pressed his advantage, driving the alliance from system to system. Every day brought new losses, new grief, new reasons to despair. But the fallen did not break. Something strange began to happen. As word spread of their refusal to surrender, more people joined them. Soldiers who had been sent to destroy them defected instead. Whole colonies rose up against coalition control, inspired by the alliance's courage. "They should be crushed by now," raged at his generals. "Why are they still fighting? Why won't they die?" His generals had no answer. They had never seen anything like this. By every measure that mattered, the alliance should have collapsed long ago. They were outnumbered, outmatched in every way. But they had something that empire lacked. They had something that could not be measured or calculated. They had hope. And hope, as had once told, was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. One night, as they prepared for what might be their final stand, gathered her commanders. They were tired. They were scared, but they were still there. "I know what I am asking of you," she said. "I know the odds. I know that many of us will not survive what is coming." She looked at each face in turn. "But I also know that what we are fighting for is worth dying for. A universe where people are valued for who they are, not what they can be used for. A future where our children will not live in fear of those above them." She drew herself up to her full height. "Tomorrow we strike at the heart of power. It is a desperate gamble. It may fail, but I would rather die reaching for the stars than live in the dirt." Her voice rang out strong and clear. "Who will stand with me?" Every hand in the room rose. Felt her heart swell with emotion. These people, these wonderful, brave, impossible people, were willing to die beside her. She would make sure their faith was not misplaced. The final battle was about to begin. The hung in space like a jewel, beautiful and terrible. For generations, it had been the center of an empire that stretched across 12 star systems. Millions of ships had come here in peace and in war. Trillions of beings had looked upon it and felt the weight of its power. Now the Alliance fleet emerged from hyperspace to challenge that power one final time. Stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the planet grow larger on the. Beside her, monitored communications while coordinated their forces. Behind them sat in a mobile chair, too wounded to fight but too stubborn to stay behind. "All ships in position," reported, "awaiting your command." Took a deep breath. This was the moment everything had built toward. Every sacrifice, every loss, every night of doubt and fear. It all came down to this. "Open a channel," she said. "Broadcast to every ship, every station, every receiver in Coalition space." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open." Face the screen. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were watching, friends and enemies, those who believed in her and those who wanted her dead. She spoke to all of them. Once I wore a crown and called myself queen. I ruled through power and fear because that was all I knew. When I tried to change, my own people cast me down. They gave me to a human as a cruel joke, expecting me to be broken and forgotten." She paused, letting the words sink in. They did not understand what they had done. They did not understand humans. On ships across the sector, people leaned closer to their screens. "This human, Park, removed my chains. He offered me food and shelter. He asked for nothing in return. He showed me that power does not come from fear. It comes from trust, from compassion, from standing beside others and lifting them up." Her voice grew stronger. "Today, I am not here to reclaim my throne. I am not here for revenge. I am here because the system that created me, the system that creates beings like, must end. Not through more violence and fear, but through a new beginning." She spread her arms, as if embracing the entire galaxy. "I ask you now to choose. Not to choose me, but to choose what kind of future you want. Will you live under the shadow of those who rule through terror, or will you stand in the light and build something better?" Her voice rang like a bell. "The choice is yours. It has always been yours, and today is the day you make it." She cut the transmission. Silence filled the bridge. Then the first reports began coming in. On its own ships, soldiers were laying down their weapons. On coalition stations across the sector, officers were refusing orders. On worlds that had lived under rule for generations, people were taking to the streets, not in violence but in hope. "They're listening," whispered, her eyes wide with amazement. "They're actually listening." But not everyone listened. His core forces remained loyal. His flagship, a massive warship bristling with weapons, broke from formation and headed straight for his fleet. "He's coming for you personally," said grimly. "He knows that if he kills you, this all falls apart." "Then let him come," said. "I will not hide behind others." The battle began. Space exploded into chaos. Ships clashed and broke apart. Missiles streaked through the void. The Alliance fleet, smaller but more determined, fought with everything they had. They were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for an idea. And ideas, had once told, were bulletproof. Its flagship carved through the battle, destroying everything in its path. It was a monster of a ship, designed to inspire terror. And now it was heading straight for. "We can't match its firepower," the tactical officer reported. "If we stay, we die." "Then we die," said calmly, "but we do not run." Moved to stand beside her. "If this is the end, I'm staying with you." She looked at him. This human who had changed everything. This simple medic who had taught a queen how to be human. "I would not have it any other way," she said. The two ships closed on each other. Weapons fired. Shields flickered and failed. The bridge shook with impacts. Smoke filled the air. Alarms screamed. But then something unexpected happened. Other ships began moving into position around its flagship. Not just Alliance ships, but coalition ships. Ships that had answered her message. Ships whose crews had chosen hope over fear. They formed a wall between and they took the fire meant for her. They sacrificed themselves for the idea she represented. "What is this?" His voice crackled over the communication channel. He sounded confused, angry, afraid. "What are you fools doing? I am your high arbiter. I command you to stand down." "You commanded us through fear," a voice replied. It was a coalition captain, her face appearing on the screen. But we are not afraid anymore. More ships joined the blockade. Its flagship found itself surrounded, not by enemies, but by former allies who had simply stopped obeying. "This cannot be happening," roared. "This is impossible." Opened a direct channel to his ship. "It is not impossible, it is simply the end of your kind of power." Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You built your empire on fear, but fear only works as long as people are afraid. And thanks to one human, I learned that there is something stronger than fear." "What?" demanded. "What could possibly be stronger?" "Hope," said. "Love, trust, the belief that tomorrow can be better than today." She smiled. "You gave me to a human as a joke. You wanted to humiliate us both. Instead, he taught me what you never understood. Power is not taken, it is given by those who believe in you." Around them, ships were powering down their weapons. Soldiers on both sides were standing down. The war was not ending with a final battle. It was ending with a choice. Billions of choices, all made at the same moment. His flagship stood alone. His crew was gone, fled, or surrendered. He sat in his command chair, surrounded by emptiness. "It is over," said. "Surrender and you will face justice. Fight and you will die alone. The choice is yours." For a long moment, there was silence. Then ship powered down its weapons. A small transport launched from its bay, carrying the fallen arbiter to face judgment for his crimes. Let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like years. Around her, the bridge crew began to cheer. On ships across the fleet, the celebration spread. After so much death, so much sacrifice, they had won. But did not celebrate. She turned to who was standing quietly beside her, a small smile on his face. "We did it," she said. "It is over." "No," said gently. "It is just beginning. The hard part comes now, building something that lasts, making sure this never happens again." Nodded, she knew he was right. In the days that followed, she refused the throne that was offered to her. Instead, she established a council with representatives from every species, every world, every voice that wanted to be heard. The empire as it had existed was no more. Something new was taking its place. A memorial was built for all those who had died. Every name was recorded, every sacrifice remembered. Spent long hours at the memorial, reading the names, honoring the fallen. Found him there one evening, as the stars came out above them. "They wanted to bury us both," she said, standing beside him. "Those officials who brought me to you, they thought they were throwing away two worthless pieces of garbage." And instead asked, took his hand. "Instead, you taught me how to rise, not above others but with them, not through power but through purpose." She looked up at the stars. "They will write stories about this someday, about the human who saved a queen, about the queen who changed the galaxy." Shook his head. "I didn't save you, I just saw who you really were, underneath the crown and the chains. Everything else came from you." "It came from us," she corrected, "and it will continue through us." She stood beside him, the man who had refused to see her as property, the man who had offered kindness without conditions, the man who had changed her life with nothing more than a meal and a gentle word. They had given her to him as a cruel joke. But the joke was on them. Because this human, this simple, stubborn, compassionate human, had lifted her higher than any crown ever could. And together they had lifted an entire galaxy. The stars burned bright above them, full of promise, full of possibility. And somewhere, in the hearts of billions who had chosen hope over fear, a new future was being born.